And this is again we wanted to hear considerations and concerns from correctional professional staff. We'd like to call forward Mike Jimenez, President of the California Correctional Peace Officers Association, Chuck Alexander, Executive Vice President of CCPOA, Elena Janelle, PhD psychologist from California State Prison Solano, Vacaville, and she's with AFSCME Local 2620. We very much appreciate you also responding on quick notice when Senator Parada said he wanted to do this hearing very soon after July 1st. Welcome, and let's go ahead and start with you, Mr. Jimenez. Welcome.
Thank you, Senator. Good
morning.
morning.
You haven't shaved yet.
No, ma'am. I appreciate you noticing. You know, as I sat here and listened to the testimony, and I've got to tell you, I applaud what we're saying we're trying to do. But I think this is another case, I think you're going to find out this is another case of us spending an enormous amount of money to defend what we used to do. We're spending an enormous amount of money saying what we're going to do, but ultimately, not that much is going to change. And I'm disappointed to hear that. When they talk about available and appropriate housing, that implies somehow that there is available and appropriate housing today. You and I both are well aware that, and we could disagree on the number, but there's somewhere near 28% of the inmate population that suffers from some type of mental disorder that probably means they shouldn't be in prison in the first place, or they should be clearly separately housed from what they currently are. Additionally, 200% overcrowding. Rather than being here talking about integrating, we ought to be talking about how we get to a level that it's manageable. To make any comparison to Texas and what they're doing in Texas and saying we're mirroring Texas, I don't think is truthful. That may not be fair. I don't think it is giving you the entire picture about everything going on. See, we too have been to Texas, and we took a look at what's going on, and I've got to tell you, we're not going to mirror what Texas does in California for quite some time. The institutions that we went to had nowhere near the overcrowding problems that we all know exist in California. There's no doubt about it. Inmates in Texas, every single one of them gets their hair cut off when they come in. They don't make deference to American Indian or any spiritual needs or anything like that. That's just the way it is. While I was in Texas, I observed an inmate with only one leg being strip searched on the floor as he rolled around on the floor back and forth, going through the process. I wanted to run from that room. Now, I don't know what the proper process is for doing that, but I know laying on the floor with women in the room is probably not it. Now, to say that we're mirroring Texas frightens me somewhat. I'm not saying they're wrong, we're right, or we're wrong, they're right, but I don't think we're headed in that direction. Texas also has a lot more lockup cells per capita than California does. Additionally, the disciplinary process, and I know you hit on that a little bit, in Texas, it's my understanding that if you refuse to participate, that you will actually move from your current credit earning status to an 85% of your time credit status. There is a substantial disciplinary negative effect for not participating in the racial integration. Additionally, and I read quickly through some of the criteria that we use for racial segregation or for noncompliance, the tattoos that individuals wear. That's not really that big of a consideration in Texas. If you have white power tattooed down both arms, you need to learn to cover your arms, is the way it's handled in Texas. It is not a real significant factor. I'd like to know, and I'd like to find this out during negotiations, but I'm rather certain we won't, what the actual participation level is in Texas, because I think you'll find that that number is going to be a lot higher than it is in California. I took a lot of notes, and I don't really want to, I don't know that I need to go through them all. You've hit quite a bit on the labor negotiations, and I want to shed a little bit of light on that. There was a statement made that we started back in April of 2007, and that's basically correct. We went over a couple of sheets of paper, and that was the criteria or how we would go about the coding process. It wasn't any more substantial than that. The next notice that we got was June 9th. Just a few weeks ago of this year. And to imply that there's a delay based on our negotiations, I think, is clearly less than factual to you.
I'm going to ask you to repeat that then. Again, so in terms of the training, you're saying?
The negotiation process, I apologize. The negotiations, we didn't get a notice letter from them until June 9th. Of this year, and I've got a copy of it if you want to look at it.
I have this. It's the notice of intent?
Yes, and we responded. They gave us, I think it was 10 days to respond, which we did, and the earliest possible dates they could get together to negotiate are tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday.
Okay, but let me back up a little bit, though. Okay, so first of all, I mean, the courts have ruled, the courts have ruled. Integration, desegregation will be the law of the land, even in California. We will move forward. It took Texas 30 years. It may take California 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 15, 30, 50, we'll see. But the courts have spoken. We must act. Okay, so back when the courts responded, beginning phase 1, et cetera, starting to lay out the plan, et cetera. In phase 1, did CCPOA, and I'll ask me as well, but I'm going to especially focus on the correctional officers, because really correctional officers would be the ones that would be actually escorting or responsible for this. The psychologist I was very much interested in, especially for looking at the bigger issue of the culture of the institution in particular. So I'm going to focus on the correctional officers. Was there involvement with CCPOA in the development? And I'm not saying that there was a mandate to do so, but I'm just curious. Was there a participation from CCPOA in the implementation, the development of plans for phase 1? You know, the coding, et cetera, how it would work, the custody, the questioning. I'm just curious as to what was the involvement.
There was involvement, but I don't think it's fair to say that there was any substantial involvement. We were given information about what was going to occur. With regard to the coding, now the remainder of these plans that have come together and that I've read here today, in this volume, no. To my knowledge, we had no involvement. And now they did take a couple of our chapter presidents to Texas with them. They selected who they were. They came from the institutions. At that time, I believe DVI was selected to be one of the institutions, and I think the other one was Solano. That was almost 2 years ago. I want to say it was 2 years ago. And they did participate in some of the discussions, but it wasn't any level of, it didn't need any negotiations. The training's gone on at 2 institutions, or I know of one because I read about it. We didn't have any participation in that. I couldn't tell you what occurred in that training. We didn't have any involvement with C-Post. Well, there is no C-Post, but there's no oversight committee.
Well, let me interrupt for a moment, okay? And maybe we could break it down this way. There's decision-making, input in terms of the implementation and the plan. Then there is training of staff to be prepared to actually facilitate the integration. And then there's the negotiation. So in a way, there's 3 different things, interrelated, but 3 different avenues. Would you agree to that?
Yes.
Okay. So then let's take first, okay, so in the decision-making, there was some input, but really not, in your feeling, substantive.
No.
Okay. The training, not the negotiation, because those are questions, as I understand it, with respect to whether or not there is a substantial impact on work assignments. But let's just focus on the training first of all. The training of correctional officers to be ready by, at that time it was July 1, in order to begin phase 2 implementation. What training has been conducted with correctional officers whom you represent from back when the court decided the development of phase 1 up to, let's say, well, up to today?